What is up, everybody? Welcome to Islanders Overtime, presented by the Elmonters. As the New York Islanders find a way. Wasn't pretty, but they snapped their three-game skid with a 5-4 overtime victory over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Hopefully, everyone converted oxygen to carbon dioxide, took a deep breath on Adam Pelech's game winner. We are running a Twitter space as well to get your questions and comments in a little bit. We do these live shows after every game. So good that you join me. I want to get to my 3 points of the game before we get into questions. So with that, let's kick things off here. First off, let's start with Mayfield. Scott Mayfield was part of the conversation and really was the conversation after the Islanders debacle against the New York Rangers on Sunday. Takes 3 penalties, struggled mightily early on in this game. He struggled mightily as well. You look at the Marcus Pettersson goal to give the Penguins the lead in this one. Scott Mayfield's on the right side of the ice and just floats away. I don't know where he was floating to, but he does float away to the high slot, leaving, I don't even know if it's a high slot, closer to the bench, but leaves Pettersson wide open. Pettersson flubs the shot, 40 miles per hour on the shot, fools Sorokin. But as the game progressed, Mayfield really struggled to keep pucks in, make the simple plays. But the Islanders won. And let's move on to our next point here. Third period collapse. 16th time this year, the Islanders have blown a lead in the third period. They allowed 2 goals in 56 seconds in the third, 4-4 game. And again, this is a team that had 2 choices. They could have looked at the Rangers' loss and absolutely collapsed early in this one, going down 1-0 to Pittsburgh in a game they kind of had to have, or they could have rose above it. And you look at what happens in that third period, and they were fine. They had the lead. They built on it, things like that. We saw the same thing we saw against the Rangers with their quick third period goal when Romanov scored, and they just fell apart. They collapsed a little bit into that shell. They allowed a lot. They didn't clear the front of the net. Maybe Sorokin wants to hold on to one of those. Anders Lee obviously goes off his skate. The O'Connor pass to Pettersson at the back post goes off Lee's skate and in. So right positioning, just couldn't make the play. And then Waugh calls a timeout. And Waugh said after the game that he called a timeout because he didn't think his players were focused enough in that situation. Obviously a sure negative. But to the last point before we get to questions and comments, a sigh of relief. Adam Pelech, by the way, starts overtime with Matthew Barzal and Bo Horvat. Noah Dobson had started overtime last game. We know what happened. The Islanders won it. Dobson tries to throw it up the slot across the zone. Panarin picks it off and scores, and Pelech starts. This was an insurance move here. Just in case the Islanders didn't win possession, they had a shutdown defenseman and Pelech out there. As soon as the Islanders garnered possession, chasing the puck down into the offensive zone there, Pelech went off for Dobson. And then later on in overtime, Dobson switches. Pelech comes back on, crosses over the Penguins' blue line and rips one. Blocker side. Second time tonight that blocker side was the motive there. Mike Riley sniped Nedeljkovic blocker side as well. And Pelech's first goal of the year, you saw the emotion. After the game, he said, it felt great, but we need to go on a win streak here. And that's something they've spoken a lot about. And you just look at the way this game went and all the ups and downs. I mean, you thought, okay, it's very easy for the Islanders to lose this one in regulation, right? But they do find a way. Now, it's nothing to be proud of. Again, not the way they want to do it. As ugly as a win could possibly be. But now they look at last year. Remember, a year ago today, the Islanders went into Pittsburgh after a devastating loss. Last year was to the Boston Bruins, a 6-2 loss. They also lost Matthew Barzal in that game. And they come in and beat the Penguins 4-2. They go 14-7-2 to end the season, make the playoffs. This year again, a year ago today, they look at Sunday's game. You lose in devastating fashion to the Rangers. You go into Pittsburgh. They find a way to get the win. A couple other things to just mention here. Matthew Barzal extends his point streak to 8 games, 5 goals, 5 assists. Brock Nelson's 1-1 tie, which was a nifty Eberle-esque move to go to the backhand, a cheeky finish if you're a soccer fan there, to go against the grain on the backhand. That was his 20th career goal against the Penguins. And the last thing, the PK, 3 for 3, allowing 5 shots on goal. Penalty kill has been a huge issue. What Waugh said after the game is that he thought the triggers were the best part of it. You saw you got big saves on the PK as well, a bunch of blocks, really smart heads-up plays. Again, taking the penalties, taking 3. The Barzal one's one that just can't happen there. Obviously, the Islanders challenge and get a penalty as well. They lose the challenge. We could talk about that real quick. Waugh was challenging for a hand pass. It wasn't. If you watch the replay, he bats it down with the stick and then makes the play. So, again, Waugh thought after the game that he was right. He's got to go back and watch that. But with that, I know you guys probably have a lot to get to, a lot to stay. We'll start with the Twitter space here, and we'll kick things off with we'll bounce around between the Twitter space and YouTube. I love these chats. I think having as many outlets as possible and avenues for questions, comments, and just conversation is important. So we'll kick things off with A. A is connecting here. We do love technology. We're going to come back to A. We're going to go to Alex Sash.
Hi, Stefen.
Hey, Alex, how are you?
Good, how are you? I said your name right this time, so I'm happy about that.
I'm very proud of you. Very proud. Thank you. Appreciate it. I've been called worse, but I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. So I kind of got a long question, but I'll keep it short. So I don't remember when it was. It was either, I guess whenever Pellick and Pollock came back together and they got that win.
Yep.
I don't remember.
That was against Toronto right out of the All-Star break.
Yeah, that one. So I was thinking to myself, like, all right, cool. We're like set on defense now, and now, maybe Lou makes a trade for offense. But then after, the Stadium Series on Sunday, I'm like, all right, maybe they want defense, but Portuzo's right out around the corner. So my question is, defense or offense for the trade deadline? And if you're aiming for offense, who would you like to see, and who makes like the who makes the most sense to grab on offense?
Yeah, it's been defense for me. I'm going to stick with that. I just think long term, I think I've liked Mike Riley with Scott Mayfield at 5-on-5. I think that's really helped Mayfield a lot in terms of just the speed Mike Riley brings, especially in transition. You saw the goal tonight. But if the Islanders could go out there, whether it's making the playoffs this year or it's a long-term commitment, I think it should be, is go get a final defenseman to pretty much solidify your entire defense core. You have Pelican Pulak locked in through 28, 28, 29. Noah Dobson's going to get an 8 by whatever he wants. Alexander Romanov's going to get a multi-year extension when his contract's up. Scott Mayfield's here for 7 years. Whether fans like it or not, it's certainly movable, but it's likely that he's going to be here for at least 4 or 5 years of those, unless the Islanders feel they need to move. And then you have Mike Riley, who's probably going to earn himself a 1-year deal, maybe a multi-year deal at a low cap hit around $1 million a year. But I think if you go out and get a guy, I'm just throwing names out here, it would be probably a dream ad for the Islanders. Go get a guy like Jacob Chikrin, sign him long-term, and have pretty much your defense core locked and loaded for Patrick Waugh for years to come. Now you look at Cizikas' injury and what that could mean now. I think Kyle McLean, by the way, is no question about it. The first call-up, if Cizikas does miss time, I'm going to guess he misses time. Not a doctor, way too much school, but the shot that he takes off the hand there, I mean, the video, the camera zoomed in on MSG's broadcast, zoomed in as he was leaving, and his hand was legitimately shaking. It was bright red colors. Didn't look good. Now, again, I'm not a doctor. I have no idea. Waugh had no update after the game, but if he has to miss time, I think you trust McLean there for sure. Does that change what the Islanders want to do? Maybe. But I think defense is the way to add. I think fans are going to hate to hear it, that I just don't see the Islanders getting a top 6. It would require moving a first-round pick. I don't know if they want to do. It depends really where they are come the March 8th deadline. There's a lot of time here. They could be in a playoff spot. They could be 15 points out. I would say, and again, fans aren't going to like this, that going and getting a bottom 6 forward is probably the move to make if you're not going to get defense long-term. I think Oliver Wahlstrom's play better. Don't get me wrong, but if you're going to treat your bottom 6, especially your third line, as a shutdown defense line that, especially in the playoffs, you're going to rely on, Oliver Wahlstrom can't be out there against the league's best. Maybe you go and get a depth forward that doesn't cost you a first. Now, again, we're seeing guys like Scott Laughton in the center, a first-round pick being asked for him. I think multiple first-round picks for Brendan Tanev on the Flames, Chris Tanev. But I like a guy like Duclair. Maybe if you don't even use him as a third-line shutdown forward, I think the speed Duclair brings, I don't think it would cost a first-round pick. It might cost Wahlstrom. Maybe it won't cost anything after that. I think it needs more speed, but it needs something that's defensively sound. Now, what they could do as well is Kyle McLean can play wing. It's certainly doable. He's done it before. That you could call, if Cizikas doesn't have to miss time, you could call McLean up if you really want to and put him in Wahlstrom's spot, and then have Cizikas. But again, we'll see what happens with Cizikas there. But we're going to move on here. If we have any chats here in the comments section on the YouTube, appreciate it. We'll get to one of those now. So it's how do you request to ask a question? Oh, simple. So you don't have to, on the Twitter space, you request to ask the question. You have to go through Twitter. In the bottom left-hand corner, it should say request. Then I go and choose you. If you're in the chat like you are now where you're seeing your question, all you have to do is comment on the YouTube link below. All right, so we're going to go to Matt. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce the name. It sounds French-Canadian, so hopefully you're a French-Canadian guy. But love seeing Pellick take his opportunity. He was thinking goal. Yeah, you listened to what he had to say after the game, and Pellick said, right as he crossed over the blue line, he knew he was shooting. This is a guy, Adam Pellick, who, when he's on his game, he is a legitimate shutdown defenseman who was part of the hands team. People don't give him enough credit for what he's able to do with the puck on his stick. It changes everything for transition, but that's a sneaky elite shot there. And it's a positive for Pellick when you don't show it off a lot. That way, goalies aren't ready for that. There's no way. I mean, Nedeljkovic, again, that's a goal that he wants to stop, the same way he wanted to stop the Riley shot. But when you're not expecting a guy like that, for example, like Mike Riley is an offensive defenseman, Nedeljkovic should be aware of that. No one is expecting Adam Pelech to rip that one. So yeah, I think for him, he was loving that. Obviously, the teammates jumping on him after the game, he felt great, but he made it clear, we won this game, but we got to go on a win streak here. And I think that's great to hear from a guy that just won you the game. Also in the room, for Ethan Sears and Andrew Gross sharing out quotes, the Islanders know that this was not a great win, but they know that it's a win. So they have the choice. They build on it against St. Louis, or they take steps back. We're at the point in the season where salsa or whatever dance move you want to talk about, one step forward, one step back, is not going to cut it for their playoffs hope. But to get a point in 3 straight games and to get those 2 points against a team like Thomas Hickey was saying on the broadcast, that probably either one of Pittsburgh and the Islanders are going to make it, not both. So you don't want to give up the 1 point to Pittsburgh here. Could come back to bite you, could not. But they get the 2 points, and that's what's important now. And that's, again, building on it. That's the important part here. Chris Russo, I think Waugh needs to set a tone and Mayfield needs to be in the box next game. Now, I agree. I wrote a story about what I think the Islanders have to do with Mayfield, given that he's here and he's not going at it anywhere right now, is that they got to limit his minutes, let him play the 5-on-5 with Riley, take him off the penalty kill. I don't think he played a lot. I think he played maybe 55 seconds or so of penalty kill tonight today. I feel like I noticed Ryan Pulak out there a lot more with Romanov. Mayfield got his shifts, but I don't think it was a lot. But just he needs to, one, earn the minutes, but also I think mentally, I think for a lot of these mistakes they're making, especially Scott. Sure, he wasn't healthy early in the year. Blocks a shot, a Rasmus Dahlin slapper off the ankle in game 1 of the year, misses 7 games, comes back, tells me, I talked to him about it. He said he wasn't 100% healthy. It still hurts some days. Goes out with the finger. He had a splint on his finger. Hopefully I gave him enough time to get his lower body healthy. He comes back, says it was valuable time to get that ankle healthy. I don't think he's truly healthy, but the mistakes he's making aren't physical. Yes, maybe not activating as much as Waugh wants his defense to activate. He's not a mobile guy to begin with, but he's making mental mistakes like a lot of the teammates. But it just seems like him, for the most part, whether it's the penalties he's making, the turnovers, just positioning like we saw on the Pettersson goal on the ice, it's just things that can happen when you're a vet in this league, especially one that the Islanders just committed 7 years to you. So again, I said this on the Hockey Night in New York show last night. I've said it a lot of times. Does putting Sebastian Aho in this lineup over Scott Mayfield, does it help the team? Probably not. Does moving a guy from the left side to the right to put Samuel Bolduc help this team be better? Probably not. The one thing I could see is Mayfield sitting is if Robert Bortuzzo is ready to come off LTIR. Big body, right-handed defenseman, block shots like it's his job, which it is, I guess, because he gets paid to do that. But we saw at the end of Bortuzzo's tenure before he got hurt that he was getting blown by off the rush. But if they want him to just be a stay-at-home defenseman and be on the penalty kill, I could see Bortuzzo coming in. Now that has cap implications as well, depending if Zizekas has to go on LTIR again. That kind of saves them with having to make one of those moves, but they'd have to waive or trade Bolduc or Aho. You could say, what about waiving Wahlstrom or trading Wahlstrom? Sure, but at the same time, you have to remember, if they move on from Wahlstrom with Gauthier in the minors and Fasching, who's apparently healthy, but let's say Fasching isn't yet, they're not going to go down to 12 forwards. It's just not going to happen. So I think Bortuzzo would be the answer, but that would be the only way that Mayfield sits for a game. Bortuzzo didn't skate this morning, didn't skate the last couple of days, but was back on the ice with teammates. I think it was Friday or Thursday that he returned onto the ice. So he's probably close, but we'll see what happens with Zizekas. But yeah, it would be Bortuzzo for Mayfield, in my opinion. Moving on here to Francis. Varley net Thursday. What can you say about St. Louis? St. Louis is in a weird spot. They've kind of turned their season around here. Jordan Binnington, for as much of the antics that he provides, he's been really good in goal. But for me, the one thing about St. Louis, Robert Thomas obviously has having a great year. Kyra's kind of turned things around. But to me, the key is Binnington. It's not scoring goals in him. Obviously, that's the key for any team. But we've seen Binnington over his career that he's not like Billy Smith, where he could be that pest in between the pipes and also stop shots. When you get under Binnington's skin early, especially often, he has a choice to make. He either ignores that and makes the key saves and is the goalie that won a cup, or he falls apart. We saw it last year against the St. Louis Blues when the Islanders went in there. I forgot the score, but they just dominated. Between the second intermission, the players are coming off the rink, and Binnington gives a shoulder nudge to Sorokin. He was mentally out of it. He was focused on the wrong things. And I think for the Islanders, if they let him get to his game, I mean, you got to get traffic in front of the guy, not just to screen him, to piss him off. I mean, it's a mind game with Binnington. And sure, can he overcome the mind games and make the key saves? For sure. But if they're going to make his life difficult, maybe have some contact with him that's not a penalty, going behind the net, things like that, getting to the front. Maybe, I'm not saying whacking him after the whistle, but fight for that puck until there's a whistle. Just get under his skin. He usually struggles to keep his form and his structure. That would be the key for me against St. Louis. It's all about Binnington. If Binnington starts, we'll find out. We're going to TH Wicked 50 Cal. That's a big name. Do you think Ishikov could get a look soon in the top 6? Maybe I'm reading too much into Wah saying that he would like a guy with speed on the wing with Barzy. Yeah, I don't, again, Ishikov maybe deserves a shot at some point. All-star for 2nd straight years, kind of proven everything offensively at the AHL level through 2 years. There were rumors that he would go back to Russia if he didn't get a contract. This summer, I reached out to his agent, spoke to his agent. His agent said the reason that those rumors are starting is because he played his junior hockey, his development hockey, training hockey in Russia for CSKA Moscow. Never played for the team, but they own his rights because of that training program. So if he were to return and go play in the KHL, it would have to be for CSKA Moscow. But as of now, the agent told me that no contract talks will happen until after the year. Ishikov's 5'8". He doesn't play well away from the puck. He's very weak defensively. He's been a little better this year in Bridgeport. Kowalski told us. We did an interview with him, but I don't see him as a top 6 guy in the NHL. He can't play a bottom 6 role given his lack of defense. It's probably why you haven't seen him get a chance last year when everyone got called up, and I don't think you'll see him get a chance. Could he be part of a trade package if some team's looking for a speedy guy with edge work and clearly has one of the best hands I've seen? Talking to Chris Terry last summer on Hockey Night in New York, Chris Terry said he's never seen hands like Ishikov's in anyone he's played against or with in the AHL. But I don't think Ishikov is an NHL answer. Now, again, maybe he deserves a chance, and if the Honors do fall out of it at some point, to prove all the haters, doubters wrong. As a small guy myself, I want to see these young, small guys get a chance and prove that size doesn't matter, but it is the NHL. And if you can't play away from the puck and you can't get up from hits and things like that, especially in a system under Wah where it's not defense-oriented, but you got to make the key plays away from the puck, I just don't see him fitting in. I just don't. We're going to move on here back to the Twitter space. We're going to try to get A back on here again. Hey, just unmute your mic for me.
Hey, second time worked. How you doing? I have 2 questions.
Yep.
What do you think of these blown leads? How much in the third period do you think is mental, and how much is a structural issue?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's mental. I think, this game, you could talk about everything in life. Like a lot of it's mental, right? But you're watching. Even Wah said when he called that timeout when it was 4-4 after they allowed 2 goals in 56 seconds, that he didn't think his players were focused. That's mental. I think structurally wise, there's definitely things to clean up. Not failing to get the puck into the zone has been an issue, but yeah, I think a lot of it's mental. I think you talk to the players after these blown leads and you feel for them because obviously no one's going out there saying we're going to blow leads. They want to win more than the fans want to win. I promise you that, even if sometimes the quotes might not back it up. They are at the NHL level because they're the most competitive people on the planet. But yeah, it's mental. And especially when over and over and over, the same thing happens and you try to do different things and the same thing happens, it mentally wears you down. And we had talked to Bo Horvat when we were in Vancouver after they blew the lead there, and Ethan Sears of the New York Post asked Bo Horvat and said, is it here we go again? Does that cross your mind? And Horvat's like, it does. And it probably did again tonight. They don't want to think that, but when it happens, this is the 16th time they've blown a third period lead this year. 16 times. I think in Trotz's last year, they did it the one time. And I think it came, or maybe a couple of times, and I think it came in like the final week of the season. I could be wrong on that. I'll have to double check, but it's just mind-boggling to see the fundamentals go out the window. But the fundamentals are because of mental mistakes and decision-making and not being disciplined. And when I say disciplined, I don't mean penalties. I mean making the right reads. I think actually to piggyback off that, Oliver Wahlstrom a lot of times tonight got the puck in deep rather than holding it for a second. I think that's a positive. I just want to touch on that there. But yeah, it's got to be mental. To me, it's mental. This team's talented, guys. I know a lot of people don't want to say that, but you saw the tweet out today of the teams that had trailed by 1,000 minutes, or that were trailing in games 1,000 minutes or fewer this year. Was it 100? I think it was. I got to look back right now. It's been a long day, but anyway, it was 1,000, right? Yeah. So yeah, how could it be 100? But the Islanders were 5th, fewest minutes trailing in games, and every other team in that list was a bona fide playoff team, and the Islanders weren't, because the Islanders have just failed so many times when getting the lead. It's crazy. Talent, the way I back it up, and for people that argue, this team's not talented, right, is teams that aren't talented are not getting leads the way the Islanders are getting leads against good teams and whatever bad teams, but they're getting leads, which means they're good enough for 2 periods to get those leads. Bad teams aren't ever getting those leads. But again, at the end of the day, talent is about execution. If you can't execute for a full 60, there's clear flaws in your game. But yeah, I think a lot of the Islanders' mistakes, PK mistakes, 5-on-5 late in games, it's mental to me for sure.
And just a second quick follow-up is, assuming Cizikas is out,
Yep.
You can correct me if my math is wrong. I don't know even if you have this stat up, but it seems to me that after Cizikas left, Matt Martin played a grand total of 90 seconds in the game. So my question is Cizikas is out, do you think they maybe opt to bench Martin? Because once you don't have that identity line, then maybe you want somebody who maybe would add a little bit more offense than Martin would.
Yeah, so I'm going to look right now for you on the Matt Martin minutes here. I know Cizikas left, I think, after his first shift in the third period. Martin ended up playing – Martin played one shift after Cizikas got hurt. Let me just double-check that here while I have it up.
I think Clutterbuck got one shift with instead of Wallstrom with Pajot and Holmstrom.
Yeah.
But I think Martin only played one more shift with Pajot and Clutterbuck.
Agreed. I to back it up, I just looked at the time on ice numbers. You're correct there. Now, what I'll say about benching Martin, I don't think so, because when McLean was up, it was Clutterbuck and Martin. Right now, again, Fasching didn't travel and quote unquote play tonight because he's sick. He was coming back from an injury. Took the ice at ahead of MetLife. Was healthy enough to be there. Just didn't play, and he was sick and didn't travel. So it is interesting to see what happens. I do think Martin would stay in. Obviously, Martin didn't play because of the situations, and we've seen it before under Waugh, especially early in Waugh's tenure, that first week where he cut the fourth line in the third period a lot. So it is an interesting point that you bring up, something to consider going forward. If Fasching is ready, does Fasching slide on that line if McLean gets called up? Again, we have to see with Cizikas. If I'm guessing, Cizikas is going to miss time. It just – the way his hand looked coming off the ice when they zoomed in on it just really didn't look good at all. Good?
Yeah, thanks so much. I really appreciate that.
No problem here. We're going to move on here to Islander Bob. How's your feeling on Holmstrom? He scored a fluky goal tonight, but he's not getting many chances. Yeah, he hasn't been doing much at all. And you saw in the game against the Rangers at MetLife, he actually got taken off the PK. He was back on it tonight, but got taken off the PK. He's not a guy that's going to be relied upon for goals. He was on pace at one point to average 25 because he's just a shorthanded goal king, but he wasn't doing that at all. I think it was his first goal he scored against, Florida? Yeah, I believe it was Florida after Wallstrom won the faceoff, Pajot whiffed, and then Holmstrom came in and scored there. But he's not relied upon to score goals. That being said, he's got to do a much better job. That third line has struggled a lot. I thought tonight they were great. And a fluky goal could be a spark, but that's just a smart read. And I thought earlier in the game, he went in to dump a puck in, and I talked to somebody about it on Twitter. Forgot who it was. I apologize, but he dumped a puck in and then didn't go after the puck. And you're thinking that's a fundamental thing there, not putting pressure, allowing for a breakout. That's a goal where Holmstrom could have gone behind the net and kept skating and gone back and left the zone, but he read the play. He saw that. He gets a nice shot, so you got to credit him there. But for Holmstrom, he's got to be harder-nosed on the puck. He's got to be fighting. He's got to be doing all those things because that's why he's here. He was drafted in the first round, expecting to be an offensive guy. He turned into a defensive shutdown guy when he's on his game. And every Stanley Cup contender, every playoff contender needs guys like that. So people might not be happy that he hasn't developed into that 30-goal scorer, top six guy, but he's developed into a role that the Islanders are desperately going to need going forward. He just has to be better in that role going forward, because I don't think enough of this year has he done a good enough job alongside Pajot, nor do I think Pajot has done a great job. Now, having Wallstrom in that line complicates things, because Wallstrom is really learning on the fly how to play defense. He tried under Trotz, it failed. He tried under Lambert, who made it a little easier for Wallstrom because, especially last year, being more aggressive, he has that injury, comes back. Lambert doesn't give him really the time of day. I don't blame Lambert. Wallstrom would go in and struggle. Waugh and Lou committed to playing Wallstrom, waiving Gauthier instead of making a different move. And then Wallstrom was benched a lot in games under Waugh when he got in against Florida. And then he struggled. But the last couple of games Wallstrom's played, he's looked a little better. But again, when you have a third line there to be a shutdown defense line, having a guy that's trying to figure it out defensively is a struggle, which just puts more of the emphasis on Holmstrom and Pajot having to be better. And I thought tonight Wallstrom played well. I thought that line was one of their better lines. So for Holmstrom, fluky goal for sure. But if that's something he could build on confidence-wise, so be it. Back here to, THG Wicked SoCal. In your opinion, was Lane's system fundamentally different than how Trotz's system was, or is it something mental? I have no clue how guys who were good defensively aren't anymore. So I can't ask you why the fundamentals went out the window. I know for a fact that Lane Lambert didn't want them to be all about defense, wanted them pushing for offense. He looked at this group, a much more talented group offensively than Trotz ever had. This team, by the way, right now is more talented offensively than the team was that went to back-to-back semifinals. But Lambert's system was different because he wanted his players to play more free. But when that happened and allowed them to be more active on the rush and go for the offense, they forgot to play defense. And for whatever reason, they could never figure it out again. Now, Waz come in and has preached fundamentals, and you've seen the fundamentals get better and better over that first week, even though they weren't getting wins, going 1-2-1. But then it got cleaned up, and then you had a couple of losses against Calgary, against Seattle, where fundamentals, again, when you look at the Ranger game and the PK fundamentals, PK has been bad all year, worse in the league, right? But I just think the biggest difference was that Lane wasn't holding them accountable for the fundamentals. The system was a little different. But I think the issue with the Islanders and what Waz trying to fix now is that Lane let too much go without holding them accountable. And again, maybe behind closed doors, he was yelling at players, but the practice is now under Waz where he stops it. We did not see that under Lane at all. And I think that's the issue is Lane did not, with Trotz, there was accountability. With Lane, not much accountability. Waz bringing that back. But the habits that were formed over the last year and a half, old habits die hard. And I think it's going to be hard for Waz to break all these habits. He said the hardest one for him to break when I asked him a couple of days ago was getting his defense to leave the front of the net and activate and join the rush. And I think you saw that a little bit. You saw it in overtime, obviously a little different. But yeah, the biggest difference is that Lane wasn't holding them accountable enough. Clearly, the room wasn't accountable. Waz brought that back to an extent, but he still has a lot to work on to get this group playing the way he wants to. We'll do a couple more here. We're going to go back to, I see there's a couple people in the Twitter chat. Let me see here. Yeah, so we'll go to Brian M here. He said, this might sound odd, but it seems like Mayfield, once he decides to play the puck, that it just takes forever for him to get his stick down, and he gets beat in 50-50s. Yeah, Mayfield struggled. Foot speed is obviously not there. Again, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt because of the injuries, and I don't think his ankle's healed, but he's never been a mobile defenseman. And in a system that wants defensemen to be mobile, that's kind of tough, right? I think something that Waz spoke about, or it was Lane, just he needs Mayfield to be quicker with his decision-making. I think it was Waz, and that has to be the case. And if Mayfield, again, I think I talked about this on Hockey Night in New York last night, that I think this is how it's going to go at the end of the season, whether the Islanders make the playoffs or not. Waz is going to go to Lou because Waz is going to have a say in personnel. Whether Waz wants to be in management or not, he's going to have a say in personnel. He's going to go to Lou and say, here are the players that I believe could play my system that I want here. Here's the players that I think are passengers that can't do it. And here's a list of players that I would like you to go get. Now, I think you look at this game, you look at the Ranger game. There's players that are drivers. There are players that are driving the car. And there's players that are passengers. And there are players that are just dead weight in the trunk that are just holding the team back. I truly believe that. You can watch the games. Certain players Waz not getting enough out of certain players. And at some points when they're not rookies and young players, like what those players are. For example, a guy like Pierre Engvall, the Islanders locked him up for 7 years. I'm not quite sure if he's going to be able to grasp what Waz wants. Now, again, moving a guy 7 times 3, 21 million, obviously 3 years annually. It's not going to be, I don't think it'll be so difficult to move, especially if you retain salary. But if Engvall's not going to get it, by the way, Waz ripped Engvall apart at a practice the other day publicly in front of the team, which Waz said is something he doesn't want to have to do, about little details. And at this point in Engvall's career, he's the player he is. He's a speedy guy that goes north-south. And fundamentals aren't great. He likes to get the puck in and chip it. He likes to be in transition, but the fundamentals at times are flawed. And some players, like a guy like Scott Mayfield, things like that, can Waz get them playing the way that he needs them to play, or is that just what they are at the NHL level? So time will tell for that for sure. Chris Russo, Maggio is having a good year. Would World Junior Gold hot in the AHL? Should they give him a look? He also won OHL Player of the Year. He scored 56 goals, and I think it was 63 games. We just did a piece actually at the Hockey News Islander site, one-on-one with Maggio. Brendan Yerkes spoke to him last Saturday. He's had 3 goals and an assist over his last 3 games. He's impressed recently. It took him a little bit to find his own. If you read that story, the quotes from Maggio, he's not where he wants to be right now, but understands the importance of patience. He wants to be as good as he was in juniors, but he understands how it's going to take time. He just wishes he was more developed. At this point, he's hungry. This kid is one of the hungriest guys I've talked to. especially at training camp, how he's been a leader in terms of he was a leader with Windsor last year, the C, excuse me. But this is a guy that's going to be an NHL player, in my opinion. He might be a bottom six guy with offensive upside, but he just plays so smart. Basic hockey, talking to Pajot and Lee during training camp, they said Maggio makes it easy to play with. We saw his warrior mentality, breaking his nose on like his second or third shift in that preseason game, making key plays, just smart player. And I think after McLean, Maggio is a hustler that, again, when the Islanders are going for a playoff run, if someone else gets hurt, there's no time for a player to be recalled. They need 5, 6, 7 games to figure it out at the NHL level. They need guys that can come in, play the basic game. McLean did that. Now, I don't know how long it would take Maggio to get ready, but you're watching him in the AHL right now, and sure, the highlight reel goals are one thing, but his foot speed and the way he's able to blow by players and quick reads, catching defensemen flat-footed, that tells me he's got the NHL speed. A lot of guys like Ishikov, to me, Ishikov is taking the advantage of time and space at the AHL level. What Maggio is doing is creating the time and space. That's the biggest difference, and I think that Maggio can be an NHL player. I don't know if it'll be this year. Don't know if he gets a chance next year. Don't know if it'll be with the Islanders long-term. Who knows? But I think Maggio is a coach's player where he does those little things, especially a guy like so detail-oriented in Waugh, that if Maggio gets a chance to play for Waugh, that's going to be a match made in heaven. But again, he's only doing it a little bit here, finding his own. A lot more time for him to develop and adjust his game. And if he does get an NHL chance, great. But if not, he's going to have to earn it for sure. I think he's been impressive as of late. And even when he wasn't getting the points for Bridgeport this year, he was creating the chances. They weren't falling. Now they're falling, and he's been really impressive to watch over the last handful of games here. Going to Islander Bob again. In the last 2 games, how many goals do you think that Sorokin could have realistically saved? Yeah, I think the rebound tonight where he didn't try to glove it, I think that's one he wants back. I thought the Pettersson one, he wants back. If you're expecting a 90-mile-an-hour wrist shot and it's a 40 flubbed shot going high, it's very hard for your hands and your mind to adjust. You're banking on the quick speed, and it's not there. Against the Rangers, the first goal he gets, again, screens are hard because Sorokin really needs to work on his screens. Not even that he's not doing a good enough job fighting through them, he's just not finding a way to track the puck. And in the NHL today, scoring on goalies, a lot of it is screens, traffic in front. So in terms of he allows, okay, let's do the math here. Again, his standard for what he wants back is different from maybe you're watching and saying he should stop that, right? He probably thinks he could probably have stopped 3 or 4 of them. Realistically, probably 2 or 3, but at the same time, he needs more. Ross talked about it after the game. He needs more help in front. Sure, does he want to control his rebound and not have that happen where 2 whacks and it goes in? Yeah. But could his team be in front of them and just get the puck out? For sure. So definitely goals he wants back. I don't like blaming him at all for much of this year. Again, as he allowed fluky goals for sure, but when you allow 40-something shots per game, you're going to allow a soft goal. That being said, he's getting paid to be an elite guy. He needs to elevate his game in key moments. And I thought, again, tonight in the third period, he probably wants that rebound one back that he allows, probably wants the Pettersson one back. But they win the game, and he moves on and tries to build in it. He will not start, by the way, against St. Louis. It will be Semyon Varlamov. Waugh said that after the game. Yep, I know it's a shocker, but he did say it. So Sorokin will get a little break. Varlamov hasn't started since, which game was it? I think it was Calgary, right? So yeah, that was his 600th career, I believe, NHL game there. So yeah, it'll be Varlamov. I thought Sorokin was fine, got the job done, but definitely, again, fighting through the screens has to be something he improves on just as his NHL career goes on, because it's only going to get harder for goalies. We'll do a couple more here. Is Mitch Korn still involved with the team? Yes. Mitch Korn is the director of goaltending. He was on the ice for rookie camp, training camp, but Piero Greco is one on the ice every day. I'm pretty sure Korn goes back and forth from Florida. I'm pretty sure he lives there, but he's heavily involved with what they do. But Piero Greco has been the goalie whisperer for the Islanders here. Mitch Korn obviously has a say in that and has helped Piero Greco a lot, but Mitch Korn is definitely involved. Go back here to the Twitter. We'll go to Alex here, then we'll go back to Twitter. With Dobson needing a contract soon, who do you think gets moved to create cap space? Well, I think Sebastian Aho is off this team at some point going forward, whether it's this year or gets moved to the draft, things like that. Dobson's going to get an 8 by whatever. Now, the Islanders are going to hope they could keep that around the $8 million range. If I'm Dobson he's going to be a Norris finalist. He's not going to probably win. Who gets moved? It's tough. It ultimately depends what the Islanders do at the deadline, right? I don't think there's any way the Islanders sell, but if they do have to sell and a guy like Pajot gets moved in his $5 million, or Palmieri, similar situation there, you're creating cap space. Aho doesn't help you a lot. cap space wise, if they can maybe try to move Scott Mayfield, if they think they can, maybe there, but it's gonna be tough for the Islanders. Definitely a veteran's gonna have to be moved to create the cap space, but it's not this year. The Islanders have time to make that move. I think it's a conversation for another day. We'll get to one more on here if there is another one. If not, we're going to wrap this thing up here. Let's see. I'm just going to go through it. All right, so we're going to wrap this thing up here, guys. Really do appreciate you guys tuning into the Elmonters Islanders Overtime. For those that are new to this, I know we haven't done video a lot, but Elmonters Overtime, Elmonters in general is going to be a thing where we're talking with former Islanders, past and present, former NHL players or players in the league now, maybe the commissioner, Gary Bettman, ownership, things like that throughout the year. We're going to do initiatives where learn to skate or learn to puck handle with Bobby Nystrom and Brian Trottier, maybe getting on the ice and talking to players. There's a lot we're trying to do here and be creative with the Elmonters, pretty much give Islander fans as much content that they want to see, whether it's drone shots of the new stuff that's being built across Elmont Way or how ice is made and the story that goes behind that at UBS Arena. They're getting an all-star games. There's so much that we could do here with the Elmonters. It's really endless. Appreciate it if you guys can like and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Again, we do have the Twitter space. I think it's just important to have as many people talking, asking questions as possible, but it's really fun. I'm excited to do this with Stan Fisher and David Kolb and see what we could do with this thing because I think Islander fans are going to love it. So again, want to just wrap the thing up here. The Islanders do blow a lead in the third, but they snap a 3-game skid with a 5-4 overtime win over the Pittsburgh Penguins. Adam Pelech with the dagger in overtime. It's been absolutely awesome here. Thanks for joining me, and we'll touch base soon. Islanders are back in action Thursday night in St. Louis, 8 p.m. puck drop. Semen will be in the goal. We'll find out the practice schedule going forward here. But thanks so much, guys, and we'll talk to you again soon.